much. Maybe we start with a little survey already, and I won't go too much into your survey, even though I don't know what the questions will be. So who here actually has a real social selling program in their company running? Okay, well, that helps. If you keep your hands up for 1 second, don't be shy, we're amongst friends. Paul, your hand should be up. You definitely have a social selling program running. I know that because I established that one. Okay, keep your hand up if it's working well for you. Okay, that's more of a surprise. Was hoping more hands at the beginning, but that still works for me. Actually, because most social selling initiatives, I thought this picture is quite relevant for conversation with Brian earlier as well, where he shared with us that some people in the company use it, and Patty's original experience was the same. Some people use it and they even get results and they use it well. And is it luck or is it just the people? Is it a generation thing? And other people don't. But as companies, a lot of feedback that we received is this. Now what I thought I'd do, I won't plug any products today. Patty done an excellent job doing that already. If we would had that many years ago in LinkedIn, it would have been so much easier. So I won't talk about a product, either Microsoft or LinkedIn. I'm going to tell you a bit about my personal experience. And to kind of get you there, and I apologize for the very few people in the room. I know 1 or 2 actually seen some of that before, but I go through it briefly anyway. My selling journey, and I do that on purpose because I think that a few of you probably find yourselves somewhere on that journey as well. And to catch you all up and bring you somewhere, I thought it's a good way to start. So where I started off is actually in an inbound center where we had a sales ratio on inbound calls. Now that meant we were completely, basically left our own devices in regards to what's coming our way. In the airline industry, that's where I was at the time. People call in because they lost their bag, they want to change their flight, or they want to go somewhere. And then on that one, you're going to try to make some money. And you have a ratio on that, but you're completely not in control. There's no control whatsoever. Whatever call comes your way. And for us, from a management perspective, all we really managed is how much time do you spend on each call? How much more effectiveness can you get out? And sales ratio has almost been a secondary thing. Even though we called it a sales center, mind-boggling. Well, we moved on from that, and then we had this great telesales environments. Marketing leads thrown at people, and then you call down your lists, and then see what happens. And we can actually, and I will save a bit of time for more Q&A, I'd love talking about KPIs, for example, because in an environment like this, what do you really do? First of all, you have a sales target, and then you give your guys, what targets do you give them? How many dials they make in a day? That's the type of environment I worked in as well. I won't name too many of the companies, but it's easily, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you kind of find out what I'm talking about. But really what happens there is you give people a dials per day target. But actually, as a team, you have a revenue target. How's that really working? Now you have your management team check how long the calls are, because you know people actually, because they figure out how to make the most amount of money. Smart salespeople figure out how to make the most of their sales plan. If it dials a day, well, then they just dial more. And then they find out which numbers they can dial when nobody answers. Now you start with a new metric because you think, if they're smart like this, we can be smarter. Let's just check and only pay them on calls that are at least 1 minute long. No, salespeople are smart. I know which voicemails answer. Let me leave a voicemail always somewhere. Now you start a new metric. How many different numbers you call every day. I could play this as long as you want. It's just mind-boggling. How many of you actually have metrics like this in their commission plan? Nobody wants to raise their hand. If you do, honestly challenge it, because it makes no sense. All you play is cat and mouse with your salespeople. You're not focusing on getting more revenue. KPIs are important, and dials could be an important metric for you. But it's a KPI and a metric. It's not something you want to commission people on, because that's where the cat and mouse game starts. And you start talking about things that are not driving revenue. That's your telesales environment. I've been there. I enjoyed it for a short while, and then luckily we started to change it. Because when we talk about inside sales, this is what happened probably for a lot of companies 5, 6, 7, 8 to 10 years ago, depending where you were on that path. And really what happened, you started to, instead of taking inbound marketing leads, you started to actually go after your customers. You went proactively out there. You said to your salespeople, find your leads. Go and find the companies you want to be selling to. This is kind of where a lot of inside sales companies are today, where you say, okay, look, marketing will help you. We work together with marketing, but marketing won't do all for you. It's not just inbound leads anymore. You're going to have to go out and find your customers. Or if you have existing customers, you find within those customers, specifically with large enterprises, you find more business. So you give it to your salespeople to go out there. But what do? They still do dials per day. I mean, it's a lot of kind of hard work going out there, trying to find out who to talk to, talk an 800 number and see if they can tell you who's actually in charge somewhere. That was the game. It was for us at the time as well. When we changed in PayPal at the time, we changed from a pure inbound telesales type of environment. Now it's at the company anyway. There it goes. But we changed then into really focusing on an outbound environment where we try to develop our own leads. And that's where then we started to figure out, okay, how do we actually find out who to talk to? And that's when I started with my teams at the time to look at social media, LinkedIn being one of them. And I was therefore then, that's not any LinkedIn employee, it's just images I can use because you pay for it to actually use images. But really, I came to LinkedIn because when we started using LinkedIn, and that was a free version, we started to see actually we can find who to talk to. And that's for me where social selling really started. You find who to talk to and you go directly to decision makers rather than working your way through an organization. That's kind of how it all started for me. But social selling, why and how? I wanted to actually tell you the story and how we then developed a social selling program. And probably the insider story, because when we started launching a social selling product back in February 2012 within LinkedIn, one thing we decided as a leadership team, we cannot do anything but social sell. You can call it drink your own champagne, even though at the time it didn't taste like champagne, because it was very tough at the beginning. We developed our own book, basically, on how to do those things. And we had to figure out how our own tool is best used, because we created basically this great solution. And I won't name it now because I promised I won't do any pitch for anything, but you heard a few things about it. And then we had to go out and sell it. Now, I personally had a pilot team, we called it. I had 4 people, Andy Eustace being one of them, he's still there today. 4 people, and let's see how that goes. Product being launched in February, 4 people on the ground. Actually, with a sales development guy myself, we were 6 in total. That was the entire EMEA team. And we were called a pilot team on purpose because that was easier to pull the plug in case it wouldn't work. And we were well aware of that. You get that great tool. Nobody ever seen it before. It's been online because hopefully it sells online as well. And then see what you do with it. So you can't cold call anymore because cold calling clearly didn't work. It's one stud we used from the outset. So what do? Okay, you use the tool to actually find people. Now you start reaching out through that tool. We had to figure out what's an email really worth versus an email, for example. And sometimes there's no difference. It's actually what you put into it. So sending an email versus an email, for example, just meant it hits people in different spots. That's really what it came down to. Well, and sometimes we done both, sent the email and an email, for example. Anyway, the first 6 months in our social selling journey been very, very painful because, and I shared with Connor earlier, when we celebrated our first 3 license deal, that had been many months in, it's actually looking back at it, it's mind-boggling how delighted we were. In the grand scheme of things, it was worth nothing because the 3 licenses didn't even pay for the coffee we consumed in all these months until we got there. That's really what it came down to. But we kept going, and what we actually found is we had a focus and we had a plan. And that's really what it comes back to. And that's actually what it comes back to with Paddy as well. So we committed to one thing only. And I'm not saying, by the way, as companies, you should go out there and say, we can only do this one thing. We had to because we were selling something very specific. You don't necessarily, so therefore, but the one thing is we kept going and we were really focused. And one other thing we did is whenever we had some success, even our 3 license deal, our first one, we started sharing. We came together as a global team actually at the time every Friday, and our global colleagues in North America were really kind. They got in early every Friday afternoon. And the one story, and we should actually turn the camera off for that. The one story, the guys in LinkedIn, by now kind of it came out, but for many years nobody did know. Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, we all got on this global call to share what happened in the week. Like we actually got to talk to Connor Shaw from SAP. It was a big story on that Friday, and we shared with everybody how we got there. But what we did actually here in Dublin, we had coffee cups in front of us, but red wine bottles under the table. And then whenever somebody went and got more coffee, that basically we just went behind the camera, because obviously we had this VC equipment, just filled that up, and in all fairness, we weren't drunk. But we celebrated each week, even though it was really tough go. We needed to do that. It's not the advice I give you, by the way. That's not what you need to do to get social selling right. But what really happened for us going through this process, we learned how to actually talk to companies. Connor being one example, and I use him frequently for that. But Connor was working for SAP at the time. We got a deal with SAP and a pilot actually. At this point in time, for us it was a lot of pilots where companies wanted to just say, let's try this out. Interesting enough, it's the biggest companies that actually saw the trend coming their way first. It's the SAPs, it's the Oracles of this world, it's Vodafone as well. It's companies like this where you would think, okay, when you start something new like this, start somewhere small. Small companies didn't see it. And nowadays though, what really is happening, the game has changed. Now everybody sees it as something they need to look into. But what I thought I'd do, after telling you that story, I tell you what you really want to be looking into and what it is about. Because we figured out a few more things. So one thing is true, selling was always social. So Dave actually said this, I think 2 or 3 years ago at an event like this. Dave said, in the future, the word social will be dropped. And Paddy had it on his slide, dropped already as well. It is all selling. But when you think about social selling and whatever tools or programs you use around that, in the end, it's part of the process because it always was there. But what you have now as an ability is to scale it. You have access to more people. You be directly in touch with people, which you couldn't otherwise. The other truth is, it's still about image. And Paddy said, like, your LinkedIn profile is now the card. I mean, in all fairness, I haven't given out a card because I didn't even order one since I joined Microsoft. Because how many people actually take your little card of you, put it in their pocket, and then when they put the suit jacket on the next time, realize, oh yeah, I met this guy the last time. Because in all fairness, most people don't put their cards on the table anymore and follow up for this. They actually go on to and as I always said, actually, what's still true probably for a lot of people, what do you do when you meet somebody and you want to find out? You type their name into Google, even if you don't go straight to LinkedIn. But if you type their name into Google, the first thing that comes up is their LinkedIn profile. It's true, except if you're rich, famous, or constantly in the news for something else. Otherwise, your LinkedIn profile will pop up first. So be mindful what people see. What is the image you're giving? And you represent your personal brand and your company brand. And what's key for you as sales and marketing leaders is you need to help your people. So for example, professional photos. I mean, it's mind-boggling the amount of people who say, the best picture I have of myself is at a wedding. Because the only time half of them wear a suit. So here they have something cut out and smiling at the camera after a few drinks. Is this how you want to send your salespeople on the road? Is this actually how you would send them into a meeting? Would you do that? You wouldn't. Why do you let them do it on their profile? And by the way, let them, you can't really tell them, it's their profile. But your salespeople will want the help with it. And a professional photographer for a few hours really is worth the investment. Think about what you do on marketing spend where you get far less out. Because the one statistic actually you can get from LinkedIn is very easy to find out how many profile views your employees as a total actually get per month. If you check the profile views for employees per month and then compare it how many hits you get on your website, for the majority of companies out there, the profile views on LinkedIn will be a higher number than clicks on your website. How much money are you spending for marketing there, and how much will a photographer cost you? Simple calculation. There is how you sell that to your marketing team. Thought I'd throw that in there. But your image is the one thing that you now have to manage online. It's not a choice anymore, and your employees need help with it. The one other thing is, obviously, social selling, and this is one thing we needed to do at the time as well. We needed to dispel the myth that you don't talk to people anymore. And Patty had it very well in there. In the end, it's still, when you have a field sales organization, it's still feet on the street. It's still meeting people. It's just how you get there. And the way you really want to measure this stuff as well is, are you getting there faster? Because this is really what it should be doing for you as well. It's not just getting you the meeting, but getting you a meeting faster because you're getting to talk to the right people. The other statistic Betty shared is 5.4 decision maker. More and more people getting involved in decision-making processes. And by the way, this number is rising because as sales leaders, for example, before 2008, most sales directors had a budget. Con and I had that conversation back then. He used to have a great budget, and then things changed. Every company went through something where budgets, when reallocated, decision-making process had changed. Patty said he had to go and ask for the money for Sales Navigator. This is happening everywhere. So more and more people are involved in the process. And if it's 5.4 people or 7 people, because there's so many different stats out there, you need to talk to more people. It should help you to talk to more people. Not at the same time, but in the end, you still need to find that conversation because selling today is still done person to person when it comes down to it. Eventually, we had that conversation this morning, who knows if the machines take over? Who knows how much AI can do for us? But at this point in time, our salespeople are still the most important people in having those conversations with people. And this is what it does for you. It gets you that conversation. So don't believe that actually you don't need to talk to people anymore. Hopefully you get to talk to more people and you get there faster to talk to the right people. And the other thing, and Patty shared it so well, so I won't even spend much time on it, what it really is supposed to do, and this is one thing we learned in those 6 months where it was such a hard slog for us to actually get to even 3 licenses, and obviously we sold then a bit more, and after 6 months it suddenly started to work. What we realized is how you address something. And the LinkedIn terminology would be leading with insights. But it's really kind of getting somebody's attention. What is important to the person you're trying to talk to, rather than what is important to you? I got an email from a guy on Monday again, and he writes, I don't even remember the company name, that's how important it was to me. Sorry for being persistent, but this is what we do. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't get you anywhere. Sending me 15 emails, which I ignore, won't get you any further. Why would I read any further on from there? How is it interesting to me? You're basically telling me that in your company, you've been either measured by the amount of outreaches you do, which, remember what I said earlier, not necessarily effective because he won't get a deal from me. I'm not his buyer in the first place. But the other thing is, why would I respond to somebody who's just saying, my product is great? Now, every salesperson coming to me says their product is great. It doesn't make them stand out in any way. How is it relevant to me? So what you need to find is the trigger points that make it actually interesting to me. One story I keep on telling is when I used to actually, as the sales director in LinkedIn, I had this own competition with me and my team that I get 1 deal per quarter. And I'd done that actually almost up till the end. Towards the end, I kind of let that go a little, but I always tried my own selling as well, just to see how it's going and to prove to the guys as well I know what I'm talking about. But the key thing was I reached out and I tried exactly this, find something that triggers people's attention. So I found a sales director in the UK that was a former rugby player in Australia. And I honestly don't exactly remember what I said, but whatever I said, he responded within the first half an hour. I got a response from him. He was all excited because he thought he's talking to the first German rugby player he ever talked to. Never played rugby in my life. I watch it and I love it, but I never played. I did clarify that for him as well, but that got the conversation going. And that's really what it is. It doesn't need to be your company just purchased another one, but clearly that worked at that stage. But whatever it triggers the attention, and you find that out online. And look, there's other tools. You don't need to use a LinkedIn solution for it, but LinkedIn actually does it very easily for you. We use it all the time. Vodafone does it very well. The one thing I wanted to actually, before I finish off, say, when Paddy finished his presentation now, I had actually goosebumps, because when we started in 2012, if we would have had an idea even how a company like Vodafone stands up now and actually sells the solution to everybody rather than us actually, Paul just sits in the audience now. In the past, Paul would have stood up here and told you how great Sales Navigator is. But if you have a company like Vodafone now saying actually what it is, just gave me goosebumps, because I remembered the 6 months and the wines on the table and all the stuff we had to go through. But social selling is the future. You have a choice, because it's like everything else. It's like the guys when the mobile phones came out and said, I don't need this. I'm okay. I have my Rolodex, I have my desk phone, I have my fax machine, I'll be fine. Within 1 or 2 years, all of them had a mobile phone in their pocket because they had to. It's not a choice eventually. It's on The Economist last week, they talked about the airline frequent flyer programs. Every airline has now one. How useful they are doesn't matter anymore, because they all have to. Now, if you wait with a proper social selling program until you have to, the only differentiator is that you're now there where everybody else is. You want to get it right as soon as you can, so you give yourself the advantage. It is the future, and the future is now. And social selling isn't something you can just drop. You need to make an effort. And my suggestion is, talk to the likes of Paddy and other companies have done it very well, or talk to Paul, who has the team of experts that can help you as well. That's me done. Thank you very much.